This is going to be a quick little video on plastic welding. It applies to pretty much all your ABS plastics. Anything that is plastic and breaks that's not fiberglass, you can use this method on. So the first thing I'm going to do on this 1100 side panel is sand all the paint off where the crack is, and I'll do a little sanding on the back too, just to clean all the area so that when we plastic weld it, it doesn't get contaminated with old paint. Now that it's sanded down, you can see it's nice and clean. You go past the crack, make sure you go past the crack, and clean off the back side too. And then the next step is to get out our soldering iron and start pushing this stuff back together. So I say push it back together because the approach that we're going to take is to essentially push at a inward angle on both sides all the way down. So you're essentially going from the top of this side down across into the other side. So I do that all the way down and then come back the other way and do the same thing coming from a different angle. So I'm pushing the top edge down into the other side, and then I'm doing the same thing on the opposite side, and then we flip it over and do the back. So we're going to do it on both sides and make it nice and strong. Alright, for this one I just put a little piece of duct tape on the back side for now, and all that's really going to do is keep these two sides together for me, because I'm going to try to hold my phone with one hand and kind of do this with another hand, just so that I can sort of show you what I was talking about there. Alright, so I'm going to start. I'm going to try and start down here, I think. Alright. So again, we want to melt it through the other side at an angle, just like that. Alright, now you should start to feel it firming up there. Of course, it's not going to be perfect until we can do both sides and go from both angles. So it's important to let it melt. Okay. Now, the reason we go from the other side, or the opposite side of the crack, back in, because you can see we've been pushing plastic up. So let's see if I can, kind of hard to tell there, but there's a little bit of a ridge there. And so we're going to push that ridge back down and go the opposite way. So pretty tricky to do with one hand. Let me turn this around and see if I can capture it here. So there's a lot of ways to plastic weld. They have machines, little air powered things that shoot hot air out at it. You'll see people add filler material to it, all kinds of stuff. But I've been doing it this way for a long time, and it works great. So this is part of the process here. Now we've melded it together. Now I'm just going to take my soldering iron and kind of run it back and forth a little bit, just to try and melt this together a little bit more and smooth it out a little bit all at the same time. Okay, so I'm just sort of running it back and forth, letting it melt as I do so. So I know for a lot of people, and for me too, you know, I just didn't understand how to fix plastic for a long time. And, you know, and that's why you see people putting body filler and resins and things on plastic that just don't belong. You know, when you put, you might be able to get away with it on something like this that's fairly rigid, but on most things, it's gonna crack on you because fiberglass is not flexible. You know, if you're using a polyester resin with like a mat or something, or, you know, worse, if you're just throwing some body filler on it, it's going to end up cracking because your part is going to flex and your fiberglass is not. All right, so this is nice and strong now, right? It's immediate, but I'm going to go ahead and do it on the other side too, so I can take my tape off now, and then we repeat the process all over again. So I'm not going to record it this time because it's the exact same thing that you saw on the other side, and then I'll show you the last step. Okay, so I'm all welded up on front and back, and it's nice and strong. So if I try to push it apart, it's not flexing anywhere, it's not separating. So the next thing, and you know, pretty much the end here, we're just going to sand this down with some rough 80 grit, get it nice and smooth, and then we're going to go over the whole thing with ABS cement. Now you can get ABS cement at the hardware store usually. It's over in the plumbing section. It's black. Let me see if I think I have a can of it over here. There you go. So this is it. You can also make your own. You can take ABS plastic, cut it up in little strips, soak it in acetone until it breaks down, and that's essentially the same thing. So last thing we're going to do on this is coat both the front and back with the ABS cement, and then we're going to let it sit overnight, and tomorrow I can come back and sand it again, and then, you know, we're done. We'll be able to prime and you know, get all this other stuff off, but you know, we'll be done with the repair at that point, and then we can worry about prepping the rest of the panel for paint. All right, now here's a little bit of a tip before we finish this up. I like to wipe it down with acetone right before I put the ABS filler on, because the acetone on plastic breaks it down just a little bit. And I find that it's easier to sand it out after the ABS is dried if I apply some acetone first. I think it just really lets the ABS plastic bond to the plastic substrate just a little bit better. All right, if your ABS gets old like mine did, you can throw some acetone in it, shake it up, and it'll be like new again. But this is real simple, not exactly a lot of technique involved. Just get it on there, especially on the back side. We'll sand that out and make it look decent, but you're really more concerned with the other side. So I'm going to let this sit just a minute. Now if you do any painting, you know the term slick out. So you can see that's kind of what happens with this. You put it on and then you kind of watch it slick out. It's, you know, not an important point. It's just something that happens that kind of smooths. Don't put it on too thick, just a little bit. And you know, if you're trying to actually fill something deep, then just do one little line like that. Let it dry. I let this stuff dry overnight. Anytime I've tried to sand it the same day, it doesn't feather out like it should. So I really like to let it sit overnight. But for this, we're gonna do both sides right now. So that's probably good enough, and I don't think it's gonna run. So I'm just gonna flip it over and do the same thing on this side that I did on that side. Try and use one hand here without making too much of a mess. And we're just gonna paint it on. And that's it. Alright. I'm gonna let it sit for, like I said, 24 hours. Tomorrow I will come back and sand it out. This is what my CB 1100 panel looks like after I sanded it all down. I don't usually sand down that much, but it actually feels really good. So it's all nice and flat and ready for primer. And I went ahead and sanded the rest of the panel too, got all the old vinyl graphics off and stuff. But yeah, everything's scuffed, so that's pretty much it for this. I just wanted to show how easy it is to plastic weld something, and then how you can use your ABS as filler. You can see the black in there is filling all the old holes. And now I'll keep working on this, and maybe I'll post one more little video after it's finished.